Hey everyone, welcome to our webinar. It's Jan with Alvo, and today the topic that we will focus on is IT asset management, IT service management, and how they actually support you in cyber security. I'm joined today by Jaro Tomik, the Chief Technologist at CDW UK, and we will split this webinar into two parts. So the first part, Jaro will be explaining how ITAM and ITSM actually relate to cybersecurity, why they are important, what happens when you don't have them, and he will also walk you through all the most common frameworks and certifications, such as your ISO, Cyber Essentials, so on and so forth. And then in the second part, it will be myself showing you how you can actually utilize ITAM and ITSM in the context of Alvo and how it practically helps you with security. Before we get into that, just a little bit of housekeeping. This session will be recorded and you will get the recording right after the webinar. You can ask questions throughout the webinar. There's a chat section for that, or the Q&A section. If you ask the question, we will answer straight away via chat, but we will also read all the questions at the end of the webinar and we'll be able to respond a little bit more. Also, connect with us on LinkedIn or anywhere where possible. And that's it for the starter. Jaro, now if you can please take over.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much, Jan. So as Jan mentioned, Jaro Tomik, Chief Technologist for what we call Digital Enablement at CDW UK. That is primarily an area that looks after enterprise service management and intelligent automation. My job is really to continuously do research in the market, look at the various tools, platforms, and various professional services available, and then see how they're reflected in our customers' environment. On the back of that, then we create quite a lot of content, one of which is obviously this webinar you are watching just now. Part of the thing that we're doing at CDW UK is also recording podcasts. So if you like, feel free to use your phone and scan this QR code. It will take you straight into what we call Octopod, which is a CDW podcast on the latest and greatest things happening in the industry, where we discuss the different movements, mergers, acquisitions, as well as the latest technology advancements. So to the topic that you have signed up for, a lot of organizations are feeling like security sits in a specific area of IT, and then GRC on its own, governance, risk and compliance, sits in a different area of the business, and then asset management sits in yet another area. These three tend to be very disconnected in most organizations. I hope that's not the case in your one, but today's webinar will be about linking those three areas, and if you do so, how can specifically improvements in maturity in your IT asset management solutions, so in your ITAM, help you with security compliance and help your colleagues in GRC to do their job better. One of the first things that you'll see if you do not have this connection, if you do not have these three areas aligned, you will see a potential for increased costs. And we're not just talking about the sort of lack of productivity in between the different departments and different handovers and duplication of effort. We're also talking about potential fines and even reputational costs. Also, what you'll see is if you do not have these areas mature enough, there will be a lack of visibility and sort of the time-consuming process of generating board-level reports, which means stale data, and it will result in the inability to provide proper direction and scrutiny. Plus, there is also an issue with potential for ghost assets that you have in your organizations, with login details, with information from your organization potentially leaving it with the leavers and causing more challenges down the line. Another big topic is compliance issues, where both IT service management and IT asset management, think sort of ITIL best practices and so forth, help ensure that an organization complies with regulatory requirements and license agreements. Without these systems, there is a much higher risk of non-compliance, which can lead to penalties and fines. Of course, there is security vulnerabilities. Like I mentioned earlier, somebody leaving with your assets or accessing assets they're not supposed to can lead to to many challenges, and the same thing applies also to your vendors. We often in organizations outsource many of our services, and those outsourcers are also using other layers. So if you think about all these different layers of onions you have in your organization, actually ensuring that everybody's compliant within those layers can be pretty difficult. So having your own assets well managed and ultimately in order helps you protect the organization and ensure that you're as secure as possible. Of course, there is also the risk of an audit that you always have hanging over your heads. And when that audit happens, it's really important to be able to provide them with information quickly. If you have things in Excel spreadsheets in people's heads and you have to then scramble for weeks and weeks to gather the right information, that can be quite painful and cost you a lot of time. And we ultimately, again, recommend that you have these sort of processes automated so that you're able to pull out reports, provide the auditors with what they need, and get on with your job. In the same way, if your company is found to be non-compliant, you're at the risk of penalties, you're at the risk of remediation costs, you're at the risk of reputational damage, or even losing your customers. So what's really key is that you drive those best practices for asset management and service management to maintain high service quality, but also assure that the security bits are well covered and that you're wasting as little time as possible. Because ultimately what we're looking to deliver to our organizations is an improved productivity time and making sure that that our frontline employees and customers are as engaged as possible so that we can deliver as good services to them as possible. A key thing I'll mention here as well is data silos. So not being able to effectively communicate across the organization, not fostering that collaboration can actually cost you dearly when an incident happens or security breach or an audit or whatever else. It might be really difficult to respond. So these sort of practices, having them in place, having that visibility, having the information, having the data, enables you to be much better prepared for what's to come. And as it's said with most cyber attacks, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, or rather when you find out you have, for example, had a security breach. So it really is important that technology professionals, technology leaders, understand this area, consider it, and make it part of their longer term strategy. To help with that, what we have is multiple security frameworks. We have specifically picked US and sort of global frameworks as well as European frameworks, as we know that's where most of our audience for this webinar signed up from. But what you'll see here is a lot of abbreviations. What we'll do is we'll cover a couple of the most popular ones, the ones we come across the most, that we believe will help you with regards to getting your asset management and your GRC right. From the US part, we will be having a look at the likes of SOC 2, and from the European part, we'll be looking at the likes of ISO 27001. We'll also look at NIS2 and at DORA. So in terms of SOC 2, what we have in there is ultimately a framework that is enabling organizations to be able to create independent service auditors reports, to be able to make sure that your systems are well described and that you can ultimately trust your services to be delivering what they are whilst being compliant with the basic sort of security and sort of integrity and governance and compliance frameworks. The benefits of this sort of framework is it's pretty flexible and it's got customized controls to fit the organization, which is actually quite attractive for modern companies. So you can make it fit in and around your basic company model. So if you come across this framework, it might be quite handy to use it because you can apply it fairly easily to your business. Most of you would have heard of ISO 27001, especially if you're coming from sort of a security background. It will be one of those frameworks that always tends to come up. It is an international standard for information security, and it kind of outlines generic requirements for any business to establish, maintain, implement, and improve their kind of ISMS, right, as it's called. So the standard includes clauses covering various aspects, and there's 114 controls to be put in place. So it ultimately gives you this sort of a guide across kind of leadership, planning, support, operation, performance evaluation, and improvement to help you really get your governance, risk, and compliance in order. And the way it relates to asset management is that obviously in combination with the asset management best practices, you're ensuring that your business is as protected as possible. The requirements in the ISO are actually intentionally designed to be generic so that they're applicable to pretty much any business. So then the core concept of the information security management system can work to your advantage. The first EU sort of directive that we have in here, the first EU framework that we have in here is NIS2. And in NIS2, what we have is ultimately several key objectives for how to best manage your cybersecurity, but also supply chain security. And this is what really links into the assets, right? Ensuring that your third-party providers are secure enough, but also that your own assets are complying within the framework. That then basically ensures that in the EU, your assets are protected and your organization is protected more than anything else. So again, it's good to consider this this framework when you are looking to combine the GRC frameworks with your asset management. DORA is one of the newer ones, which has been put into place. I believe it was 27th of January this year. It applies primarily to financial organizations, and it kind of considers the key areas of ICT risk management, incident reporting, operational resilience testing, third-party risk management, and oversight frameworks. What we're still seeing, though, is a lot of organizations are not really quite there yet, even though this is already in place and everybody should be in the EU compliant that it relates to, so the financial organizations. We still see a lot of organizations even it's only now that they're starting to properly paying attention to it and what is it that they actually need to do. So what is important is that that this is considered that if you are within financial services such as banks, insurance companies, investment firms, that you consider this very seriously. And another one that we really wanted to mention in here as well is the Cyber Essentials Plus, which ultimately enables you to gain an advanced cybersecurity certification that's been approved by the UK government and developed by the National Cybersecurity Centre. The key values there are rigorous testing. So unlike in Cyber Essentials certification, which involves self-assessment, the Cyber Essentials Plus includes a more thorough, independent technical audit of your systems. At the same time, you can achieve enhanced assurance and better compliance and reduced risk. So a lot of people might not be aware. Obviously, a lot of people know that Cyber Essentials are there, and some of them may have gone through some of that certification. But the Cyber Essentials Plus really takes it to the next level and helps you to understand how, in relation to your assets, how to best protect them and how to ensure that your process and governance are in place to reduce risk that the organization can potentially be exposed to a minimum. Also, it's important then to understand the benefits of having ITAM and ITSM as a backbone of your security compliance. So the obvious one is the visibility and control. It's absolutely key that you have the full visibility of your asset, or as much as you can, so that you know what's happening with them, where are they, who uses them, and people are not just walking away with your data. Of course, you want to also have a look at improved compliance, because both ITAM and ITSM help organizations adhere to regulatory requirements and industry standards. So, for example, ITSM can manage access requests and incident logging, which are crucial for certifications like ISO 27001 and Cyber Essentials Plus. Efficient incident response. That one is probably pretty obvious. If you have your incident response predefined, if you have it optimized, then whenever you identify something has happened, you're able to react to it much faster. Automated patching and updates. Again, massively helps if you understand which version your assets are at, so that you can help ensure that they're at the latest stage, and also risk mitigation, cost management, and audit readiness that we have discussed previously. At this point, I'll hand over to Jan, who will walk you through some of the specific examples of how some of these can be applied on their platform, their Alvo platform, and how he can or how they can rather help you with your GRC compliance in asset management.
Thank you, Jaro. There are so many of those, right? The good message, or the good thing is that actually once you cover one of them, the rest becomes a little bit easier, because a lot of those controls and processes are actually shared across all of them. But what is Alvo? Alvo is a Microsoft-centric ITSM and ITAM solution on a single platform, and it consists of service desk product and asset management product. There are many synergies between them, but also they are standalone products. So some customers are using them together, some are using them separately. But as you can appreciate, these are not security solutions, security tools, but they actually are crucial for security, exactly in the way that Jaro mentioned, because they enable security. And I think it's best to actually show this on a practical example. So I will share a very kind of basic scenario. So let's say I'm James and I'm IT person, and I forgot laptop in my car, which shouldn't happen, but it did. And now someone stole that laptop. So I'm on my mobile phone and I'm quickly logging to self-service portal and reporting a loss of my laptop. So I'm just gonna write here that it got stolen, and then I'm very sad about it. And I'm gonna hit OK. And I've essentially raised a security incident. Now someone will need to work on that security incident, and they will need to know what to do. So they need to follow certain process, certain workflow. They need to assess the incident first. So we're just going to move to the workflow. And in order to assess the incident, we really need to understand what actually happens and what is the broader context of it. So we need to understand what was lost, what device was lost, and who's James, and how it all kind of affects our security. So with one click, we can actually see all the details of the device, the hardware configuration, software configuration, past history of the device, and we can also see that James is actually the one that's using this device, and he's part of the IT department. So we are already kind of conscious, because if he's part of the IT department, he potentially might have some elevated rights. And once we check James, because if we click on that little arrow, we actually see this full context of the organization. We can actually see information from Entra ID, and with one click get to Entra ID, and we can understand very quickly that James actually has a lot of rights into all kinds of system. So someone stealing his laptop could actually use it as an access point and to our network, to our infrastructure, and do all kinds of nasty stuff. So this is the asset management part, the visibility, as Jaro mentioned. And then when I come back to the ticket, I can actually just continue the workflow and now start an actual response to that incident. So we will revoke access and disable Entra ID account of James, and remotely wipe out the device. These are the security parts of it. But as you've seen, with a very basic example, we had service desk to help us with the process, to implement certain steps, how to go about it, and asset management to give us some visibility and further context. Because the worst thing that happens with this certification is that customers go through ISO 27001, Cyber Essentials Plus, what have you. They develop a lot of processes on paper, and then it stays on paper. So having a service desk actually allows you to manage the process part, having incident reporting, change control, secure onboarding, offboarding. And when you do these recertifications, they actually come and ask you, so how do you manage new vendor? How do you manage employees leaving the company? You just open service desk and show them the audit trail and you're covered. The asset management part, exactly as Jaro said, you can't secure what you don't see. So if you have that visibility, you reduce the threat surface. We will actually focus on asset management a little bit more because what we see in UK and Europe is that companies have the service desk element covered to a degree. Most of them do. But for ITAM, there are huge gaps. Most companies, even the bigger ones, actually have really basic maturity in ITAM. So we thought it'd be a bit more value to focus on ITAM a little bit more, but don't worry, you'll see both of them plenty. Anyway, when you implement asset management, sometimes I have these conversations with customers when they ask me things like, can we just detect everything, discover everything, automate everything? I don't want to do it. It's too much admin work. And they are kind of hoping that there's enough automation for them to not having to have a process. And they are asking these questions because they are worried IT asset management is too manual. And it's not. It's actually much easier to implement that you think, and we have really like swift implementations when you get into that automated state very quickly. But it's really important that you don't resign on the process. You have to have the process and all those automations and discovery that actually helps you to have controls around that process, so that really those key points are ensured, that security at key points is ensured, and you know you are doing things properly and you are minimizing that risk. So let's have some practical example again. So I'm gonna go for the asset management part again. I'm gonna look up James again. We know that James actually got his laptop stolen. So let's now assume that James got a new laptop. What we need to do is to have a confirmation from James that yes, I have received this new laptop. So we will. I clicked on a wrong. I clicked on the wrong button. Anyway, we will generate what we call a handover form, which is a confirmation between you and James that yes, I have received this laptop, this new laptop, and I understand that it will be collected from me when I leave the organization. He signs electronically. And this is important because the leavers process is actually one of the other areas where very often we see a lot of risk. Very often IT doesn't learn soon enough about people leaving the organization, or they don't learn about it at all unless they do some kind of audit. And when they do, they might not be able to collect everything back. So the employees might actually leave the company. The accesses are not revoked. They still have some old device that can access VPN network, and they can again access, for instance, CRM, ERP data, even if they don't work in the company for 3 months or so. So really just think about this as an example, because the life cycle, there are many other ways where you need to enforce security and enforce the controls. So for instance, if there are new devices, you want to be able to categorize all the idle devices for new device, ensure that there's antivirus installed, that it's a standardized make and model. If you are decommissioning a server, so you are at the end of the life cycle, you want to make sure that you erase everything properly and get rid of it properly. So having a platform like this, where you can actually manage asset lifecycle through this very straightforward tree structure, helps you really a lot. And it goes beyond your IT assets. You can actually track anything such as badges for like physical access, but also things like contracts. So for instance, you'd have your suppliers, and this is something that you are required to track as part of ISO and those other certifications. And you might have a new contract getting ready. So it's just a matter of coming in here, clicking on a new object, and based on a template, you can just put in a new contract. By the way, if you go through service desk, this will be automated, so it will be created automatically based on that input form. And then you can see that some of the information is taken from that mother object, so you don't have to fill any supplier here or contract status. You just fill the mandatory fields. So how long will this be valid to? I'm just going to pick some date in future. and contract URL. I'm just gonna put something in here, and all the other details, and then really you can track contract as well. You can track SSL certificates. You can track pretty much anything as it pertains to the security. So what then in effect happens is that you now have a single source of truth about all your important assets from IT perspective, but also from security perspective. So now once you have this single source of truth, you don't have to connect the dots, you don't have to go to multiple resources. But if you need anything that pertains to security, you can just very quickly see it in Alvo. So a couple of examples. Certificates. So show me all certificates that we have and notify me on all certificates that are approaching end of life. Notify me on everything else that's approaching end of life. Show me expired certificates if we have any. Show me everything that's approaching warranty so that we don't want to have our infrastructure and our whole like company on an unsupported old tech. We want to have it on a supported tech that's still like properly supported by the vendor. So for Windows 10 devices that can't be upgraded, or if you think about software license management, you can just go and see if there's a vulnerability, just quickly filter for all versions that are actually have that vulnerability on them, so and so forth. So again, the scenarios here are endless, but it's important when you have those data, you can just report on them, and you can report on them also through standardized reporting. So you can have reports like all assets with expired warranty, all computers that have BitLocker disabled, so and so forth. Of course, so far I've been mentioning the end user devices, I've been mentioning contract certificates, but of course, there's also your infrastructure. And with your infrastructure, many elements actually tie into each other. And you need to understand not only details of those particular configuration items, let's say, but also how they relate to the rest of your infrastructure. So let's have another example. There's server 23. There's been some issues with it. So we can just see the details of that server. It's a virtual server. We can see some tickets related to that server and its history. But we also want to understand how this server actually relates to the rest of our infrastructure, so that if there's an incident, we understand the impact, or if there's a change, we understand the impact as well. So in this case, we can see that there's this server 23, which is hosted on this physical server, and then it supports IIS server and it supports MS Dynamics. And we can also see the security relations, because we can actually define all kinds of relations in here. So we can actually track the cybersecurity assets as well. So we can differentiate what are our primary assets, what are our secondary assets. So in this case, we see that the ERP is a primary asset, and we can calculate the cybersecurity score based on confidentiality, integrity, availability. And we can also understand what are the supporting assets here. And their calculation of the cybersecurity score is actually taken automatically based on the primary assets. So you can see that this subsystem B has a lower score than subsystem A, because the subsystem A supports other elements and services as well. And we also see that James is the owner of this service, so on and so forth. So this is actually a proper configuration management database to allow you understand the risk in your environment and analyze risk. We looked into this element. Now let's have a look into that service desk part again, because it's not only the security incidents, but there are so many other things that you need to do as part of your security operations. So you want to be able to process workflows for GDPR, add data, processing ADAs, suggestions for improvement, vendor management, so on and so forth. And the service desk element can actually help you with all those workflows and processes. And I thought it'd be nice to actually have some example that will tie this all nicely together. So the example I pick is actually something that's also a little bit different, because not all security incidents are actually triggered by your users, but some of them might be triggered by your monitoring and security tools. So let's say there's been an incident. Zabbix is monitoring your infrastructure, and it noticed that there's a series of suspicious authentication activities. So Zabbix is raising a ticket for you, and then you have our AI assistant to help you resolving this ticket. So we can see summary of the ticket by the AI assistant. So rather than us reading through all the log, we can just read the summary and then just go into as much detail as we need. The AI assistant ensures that this is properly categorized. This is a major incident and a security incident, so that's all right. It gives you a security score, major incident score based on a CMDB, and also similar tickets being raised at the same time. And in order to help you resolve this, it also offers past tickets where something similar happens. So you can go there and see how did we resolve this the last time around. The last thing that the AI assistant does for you is that it actually gives you suggestion what you should do in order to resolve this. So rather than you going to knowledge base and looking for knowledge articles, you have a response from AI that's very context aware, specifically for the exact situations that you are dealing with. And of course, the CMDB element is there as well. So you can just click on the CMDB diagram, connect this with that asset management part again, and see, all right, so this is affecting our exchange online, which is affecting emails and calendars, which is affecting this cybersecurity asset with this cybersecurity score. So we kind of have everything in one place, and we can handle the security incidents such as this one. And then the last thing to show you, now that you have the process part in service desk and the asset management part and also AI to help you with all of that, you want to have some reports from this. So you can just report on your security incidents. You can see the number of security events, how many open incidents there are, how many of them are open for longer than 30 days, what's the average response time. You can track supplier management and have a dashboard from that, how many key suppliers are there, how many number of assets. Risk analysis dashboard, so what are the primary assets, what are the secondary assets, and how you categorize the risk per impact, per action, per probability. So what you see is just what we said at the beginning, that whilst asset management and service desk is not cybersecurity tool, it's really important for your cybersecurity because it handles that process part and that visibility part. And that's it from me in terms of the demo. But we have a Q&A section ready for you. So if you just bear with me with 1 second, and then we can start answering those questions, whether for me or for Jaro. Let me just see what questions we have.
I think Dan's been doing a really good job answering some of those already.
Yeah,
so if you actually head to the Q&A section, you'll be able to see some of those responses. But one that just popped up is it possible to track non-IT asset as well, Jan?
All right, so in terms of non-IT assets, definitely. So it's a universal tracking system, and customers track their things for IT, things such as badges, keys, but also absolutely non-IT things such as like facilities, equipment, machinery. So it's designed for IT, and IT is the heaviest user, and they get most of it. But it's a universal tracking system, so you can track pretty much anything and any property. So then I see there's another question. If we implemented Alvo in our organization, who would be responsible for gathering and maintaining the data? So it's important to understand that Alvo is integrated with your M365 environment and beyond. So a lot of the data you would get just through integration. You would get connection to your Entra ID, to Intune, what have you. Then the responsibility depends on your like internal governance, but there are a lot of elements that help you maintain it up to date and accurate, such as our agent, Intune integration, SNMP scanning, IP range scanning. So these all together kind of give you that control over your data. Can we deploy ITAM as a standalone solution? Does it integrate with other systems? Absolutely. Alvo Asset Management integrates with other systems such as your remote control, patch management, your security tools, but also it integrates with other service desks. So if you are using your Fresh service, ServiceNow, definitely you can have our ITAM working alongside with that. What is your service platform you are using from your demo? So it's Alvo Service Desk. Dan provided a link. Thanks, Dan. How does Alvo integrate with security solutions? So the typical scenario is the one that we showed in the service desk part, where the security solutions usually trigger creation of tickets within service desk. But also on the asset management part, you can trigger other solutions from Alvo asset management as well, and then you start your session with that context, so we can feed in like ID of that device, so and so forth. And what percentage of your customers utilize ITAM? So Yana is writing 80%. I think that's about right. So I'd say 70% of our customers have service desk and asset management in tandem, and then you have about 30% that only have one. And asset management they are kind of 50-50. So we are getting towards that 80% figure for asset management. To what extent is the asset management automated? It's very automated, exactly as Dana is writing there. So for instance, like when we start the implementation, we have a data strategy session and we need to define what are the sources of truth for various elements. But typically, it works like this. So if the boxes with your devices physically arrive, we can integrate with your supplier management system. We can import CSV, or we can just take them through mobile app, QR code scanning. So we eliminate some manual effort there, not a proper automation, but then we are picking up information from Intune. So if it changes in Intune, we propagate a change into Alvo. If it moves user, it's moved in Alvo. If user changes department, his or she is moved in Alvo. So it's automated based on triggers from these other elements that you maintain. I'm interested in the acknowledgement process. So I'm not sure what is meant by that question, but if it's about acknowledging that I have that device, it's precisely what we've shown in the webinar. So you get that form where the user actually gets a notification, they sign it electronically, and then they can access all these documents that they signed on the portal. Each employee can log into the portal via Entra ID, so they don't have to have any login and they can see their assets all the time. And we can also differentiate between assets that they are using directly and that they are responsible for. So if there's, for instance, a project-based work, and as part of the project, someone is responsible for all equipment assigned to that project, we can also differentiate between that.
I think this also is very handy when you have non-connected assets in your database. So that way you can basically track even things like in a school, you could track boards or anything like that that is part of the project or the classroom, and ultimately make whoever needs to be responsible for it, maybe a facilities manager, to actually track these items and ensure that they are in the right room at the right time. And for example, in that case, kids are not moving in about between different rooms. So you're not just looking at security of your connected assets, of your mobile phones, laptops, servers, but you also can start managing your non-connected asset security.
That was a great point, Jaro. So you can also generate QR codes for these, and then when you scan them with our mobile app, you can see their whereabouts, and you can do a regular book to floor inventory audit in a self-declaration manner where everyone just gets a notification. These are the assets that you have. So can you please confirm that you are still using them? And for anything that's physically somewhere, such as those boards that you mentioned, you can just go and scan them with a QR code scanner with our app, and then you do your book to floor audit in a matter of like 3 days. So it's another control point, but also it's much faster than most customers usually expect. All right, so I suppose that's it. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for watching the webinar. Thank you for asking the questions. If if you found this interesting, definitely feel free to ask for a trial on our web. And if you have any subsequent questions, please feel free to connect with myself and Jaro. Thank you, Jaro, for participating as well. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.